Hello, Hub City kids. I hope you are having a fantastic week. And before you pause this to tell each other about all of the good things that have happened to you this week and telling your family that, because remember, every good and perfect gift comes from above. Today is also a very special day. Today is Mother's Day, and you all have mothers, every single one of you. And so I want you to practice some gratitude to God for giving you your mothers, but also you can pause this video and go and tell your mom, whether she's sitting next to you or somewhere else entirely, go tell your mom at least 3 good things that you love about your mom. So quick, go do that really fast. And I'm talking about my kids too. Go and tell me all the great things about me because I want to hear it too. Moms need to hear some good things every once in a while too. Did you do it? Great. So we've been in the book of Matthew? No, we've been in the book of Mark, which is the second book in the New Testament, and it is one of the Gospels, which we've talked about. Do you remember what gospel means? Good news. So there is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and those are the Gospels. And so it's the second Gospel. And we've already gone through John. So by the time we're done with this, you'll have been through half of the Gospels already, which is great. And the Gospel tells us about Jesus's life. That's specifically what the Gospels are talking about, the good news of Jesus's life when he was living. And Mark was probably the first one of the Gospels that was written. And do you remember what special job he had? Was he one of the disciples? No, he was actually Peter's secretary. So most of these stories are ones that Peter told Mark about Jesus. So that's pretty cool. And what have we learned so far about Jesus in the Gospel of Mark? The first story, remember, we started off immediately with learning about John the Baptist and how he was that herald that came and said, "The king is coming, the king is coming." And it started off by talking about a passage in Isaiah, which is in the Old Testament, and it was a prophecy. Can you say that word? Prophecy. A prophecy is what? Remember? It's a word that talks about somebody who is hearing from God, and God is giving that person words, and the prophecy are the words that are from God. And a prophet is somebody who hears those words and then spreads them to other people. It's kind of like John the Baptist, where he was saying, "The king is coming, the king is coming." Except this prophecy happened hundreds of years before Jesus came. And if you read through Isaiah, we talk a lot about it at Christmas and Easter, because God describes so clearly and with so many details exactly what Jesus's life and death and birth and everything is going to look like. And so then Jesus came, and we know that he is the king. And that prophecy is telling us that this is the king that we have been waiting for all of eternity. This is the promised king that God told his people, "I am going to send you a king that will never fail you. And he will be the one you can put all of your trust in, and he will save you as a nation." Which creates some issues for God's people, right? Because what kind of king are they expecting? They are expecting a powerful king to be born of the lineage of kings, and he's going to come, and he's going to have a big palace and lots of servants and a huge army, and he is going to give them land. He is going to give them a kingdom that has boundaries and probably a wall around it, and they are going to stay safe as a kingdom in a place. And is that what Jesus does? No, he comes born in a barn with no money. He's a carpenter. Nobody pays attention to him. And he comes and says, "My kingdom is here, and you are all my people. And I'm going to keep you safe, but it's not going to look like what you think it's going to look like. I am going to, instead of being a big, powerful king that has people following me and I tell them what to do and we're going to fight, instead, I'm going to let myself die, and I'm going to touch people with leprosy, which all the unclean people, and I'm going to eat with the tax collectors, and I'm going to find the most unimportant, dirty, unlovable people there are, and those are the people I'm going to spend my time with. Those are the people that I'm going to heal. And so this whole book of Mark, we're talking about the kind of king Jesus is and the kind of kingdom he is creating. And it's not like what most of us expect, and it's definitely not like what God's people are expecting, especially the Pharisees. And those are the religious leaders, and the Pharisees come up a lot. So that is kind of what we've talked about in Mark so far, which is kind of crazy because we're in Mark 2, and there's already been so much, and there's a lot more, although it is the shortest gospel. So we're going to read Mark 2, verse 23 through the end of 28. And this one, if you have the little titles on your Bible, is called Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. So why don't you all stand with me? And we're going to read Mark 2. One Sabbath, he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and was hungry, he and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar the high priest and ate the bread of the presence, which it is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them," Jesus said to them, "the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." So there's some confusing things in there, so you should read it again if you want to, but tell each other what you remember from the passage. Ready? Maybe a cat. It's kind of a pathetic cat, but it's fine. So what do you remember from that passage? Have you ever heard the word Sabbath before? We just talked about it in Exodus. Sabbath. It was one of the commandments one of those 10 commandments that Jesus set up for his people. And it goes back even further than that. When God created the world, what did he do on the seventh day? He rested. Not just did nothing, but he specifically rested. And then that was so important to him that he wanted to do that for his people. So he said, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy." That is one of the commandments that he gave to his people. And it seems a little bit weird when you're reading the 10 commandments, because it's like, remember God, don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery, don't covet, don't want the things that your neighbor has, and then remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So there's of those 10 rules, that is something that is so important to God. So what does that mean exactly? What is Sabbath? It is a day that we see in that verse of Mark that Jesus says, Sabbath was made for you. It is made for us. It is a day where God is telling his people that I love you for who you are, not for what you can do for me, which is pretty amazing. And especially when you're thinking about God's people who were slaves in Egypt. And when you're slaves, do you get a break? No, they were serving this king, this Pharaoh, who was always making sure that they made bricks. And even as a punishment, he made them keep making bricks, even when he took away their main ingredient. Remember, we talked about making a chocolate cake, but not having the chocolate, and how hard it was. And he was always demanding more and more and more and more from his slaves. And that was the kind of king that Pharaoh was. And God is saying, this is the kind of king I am. I love you so much that I want you to take one day and rest. Because whatever you're making isn't what's important to me. Whatever you're doing isn't what's important to me. It's you that's important. And I want you, and I want you to spend time with me. But because we as people have a really hard time with that idea, the Jewish people, they created all sorts of laws in order to make the Sabbath look like what they thought it needed to look like. There are so many laws, like you can't turn lights on and off, and specific ways about how you sit and how you sleep. And there's all sorts of rules because they took it to the extreme in making rules so that the people kept the Sabbath, which is kind of silly when you think about it, because then you're still doing all of the things. And here comes Jesus, and he's saying, you're missing the point. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I am the one who gets to make the rules. And I'm saying you don't need to do all of these things. You just need to be with me. You need to take delight in my presence and the things that I give you, and you need to rest. That's what it's about. Because the problem was, God's people were spending so much time worrying about if they were breaking the rules of the Sabbath that they weren't actually resting. And so this is kind of a confusing passage because it's Jesus and his disciples walking through a field. And if you've ever been through a field of long grass, there's the little seeds. I know I have a big hay field in the back of my property, and my kids love plucking the little things of grass at the end. And that was actually against the law for Sabbath. And so the Pharisees, who are just watching Jesus and his disciples so closely because they want to catch him doing something wrong. We saw that in our passage about the paralytic last week or 2 weeks ago. And so they're saying, wait, that's against the law for them to be plucking those little pieces of grass. And so how can we follow you when you don't even follow all of the rules that we have in place? And Jesus is saying, I have come and I am the ruler of the Sabbath, so I get to make the rules. And I'm saying, just be with me. It doesn't matter if somebody's plucking grass. I am the ruler of it, which is another example of Jesus saying that he is God and saying that he is the Son of God. And the Pharisees do not like that very much. So why is that important, you think? Why is it important for us to remember? How many of you keep the Sabbath? It's kind of a weird thing that now we have gone from not obeying any of the rules of the Sabbath, because it used to be, even like 50 years ago, that even stores in America were closed on Sunday. And in a lot of places of the world, that's still the case. And it's this kind of like rule that we decided as a society, it doesn't matter. Why are stores closed on Sunday? We can make more money if we're opened on Sunday. And we ended up getting so busy that we forget to take a break too. And we forget to spend time every single week remembering who God is and just resting and relaxing. And it's pretty cool. I have spent a lot of time reading about Sabbath, and it's something that I feel very, very passionately about. So if you ever have questions about it, I would love to go on, and I could go on for another hour, but I won't do that. But I want you as a family to think about that. I want you to think through, do you have time as a family to just sit and enjoy each other on a regular basis? Do you have time to where you have special things that you do to just rest and relax and forget about your to-do list and forget about all the things that you need to do and just enjoy the gifts that God has given you? It doesn't have to be on Sunday. because we know that we don't have to follow particular rules. Jesus is saying, I just want you to be with me. You can go on Sabbath. If your Sunday is your Sabbath, you can go outside and you can pick all of the grass heads that you want, and that's totally fine. So I want you to think about, as a family, if you do that, and some of the things that you would maybe like to include Sabbath in your weekly rhythm. My family started doing this a couple of years ago, and we don't spend 24 hours. I know a lot of people who do that, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and I wish that we could, but with our schedules, that's just not happening yet, and that's okay. But we do have an intentional time where we do some Sabbath practices. One of those things is we have ice cream every single Sunday. Every Sunday night, here's what we do. We watch usually this video together, and we eat ice cream. Usually we have nachos for dinner that night, and then we watch a fun family beautiful thing together. My funny requirement is usually they have to have a British accent in order for it to qualify as a Sabbath watching thing, because those just tend to not be as action-packed, and I want it to be something slow and beautiful. So I just require that they have British accents. Sometimes I make them watch documentaries on whales instead, because those are beautiful. But those are some of the rhythms we do, and we look forward to it. We look forward to knowing that every Sunday night we have a special time set aside where we get to eat yummy things, and we get to be together and watch something together and relax and be cozy and just enjoy the gifts that God has given us. So that's something we do. But that's not going to be what is right for everybody. So your family, maybe you love hiking, and so every Sunday, if that's your Sabbath day, you go for a family hike. That is a lovely way to remember who God is, and you're not doing something because it gets something done, it doesn't check something off. It's just a way for you to be together and be with God and just delight in how wonderful He is and how wonderful the gifts He's giving you are. So what does this teach us about who God is? I've talked about it a couple of times today. He cares about us. He cares about our health, because if you're going 100 miles an hour all of the time, we get burned out. We get tired. If you are, especially as a kid, if you're going to school all day and then you're doing sports all of the time, and on the weekends you're doing sports, eventually you just get tired and grouchy, huh? You go to parties at night, you stay up all late, super late. I don't know what kind of life that is, but it sounds crazy and super exhausting. And eventually you get in the habit of that, and you start to think like the Israelites, where you think that you're only worth what you can give to somebody, what you can perform, and what your value is based on what you can do. And that is not at all how Jesus is. He cares about our hearts so badly, and He just wants to be with us. And that is beautiful. It takes a lot of practice to get to the place where you can just accept that Jesus loves you for who you are, and you don't have to do all of the right things. But it's true, and you can practice. And especially now, if you're practicing that as a kid, that's fantastic. So that's your craft for this week. I want you to talk as a family, make a list of some of the things you would like to try. Add one thing, and start really small. Add one thing that you're going to do every week as an intentional Sabbath thing, even if it just means eating a bowl of ice cream together every Sunday. That's a really good start. So I hope you have a great week, and we are on the countdown to hopefully seeing each other again soon in this space. I will see you soon. Bye, Hub City kids.